Hey everyone and welcome. So, if you're a Laravel developer, you've probably felt that pull between keeping things simple and building for the future, right? Well, today we're going to talk about a really powerful pattern that kind of sits right in the middle, one that's often overlooked. It's called the modular monolith, and honestly, it might just be the perfect solution you've been looking for.
Yeah, this probably hits a little too close to home for some of us. You start a new Laravel project, everything's clean, everything makes sense, and then over time, things just start to get messy. What was once a joy to work on can turn into this tangled web that's a real headache to navigate.
So, let's get into it. Let's talk about this mess. We're going to look at how so many projects, even with the best intentions, end up as what people call a big ball of mud. Okay, so here's the problem in a nutshell. In a typical monolith, there are no real walls inside your application. Your order controller can just reach out and grab the user model. Your payment logic? Who knows? Maybe it's tucked away inside a shipping service for some reason. You see what I mean? Without any enforced boundaries, everything gets tangled up and it becomes a nightmare to maintain, a pain to test, and just really hard to understand what's going on. And this is where developers usually feel stuck. You start thinking there are only two ways out of this mess, and frankly, neither of them feels great. It's this classic problem. Do you just live with the mess, or do you go for a solution that's, well, probably way more than you actually need? So on one side, you've got the monolith. It's super easy to get started with, easy to deploy, but it just doesn't scale well when your team or the code gets bigger. And on the other extreme, you have microservices. And yeah, they absolutely solve the code tangling problem, but now you're juggling network issues, crazy complex deployments, distributed systems. It's a whole new universe of problems. And this quote just says it all, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the issue. For a small team, jumping to a full microservices architecture is just overkill. It's a massive overcorrection. You're solving one problem, sure, but you're creating 10 new ones. It's literally like bringing a construction crane to move your living room couch. So what if there were a third option? A middle path that gives you the clean separation you need, but without all the operational headaches? Well, turns out there is. And this is the hero of our story today, the modular monolith. So what exactly is it? Okay, picture this. It's still just one single application. You deploy it exactly the same way you always have. The magic is all internal. The code is organized into these distinct, self-contained little boxes, or modules. You get the clean boundaries you want without having to manage a whole distributed system. Okay, let's really look at this table here. Zero in on that middle column, the modular monolith. See how it shares the single deployment and one code base of a traditional monolith? Super simple. But, and this is the key, it also has the enforced boundaries of microservices. It's that combination that makes it the absolute sweet spot for so many growing products with small or medium-sized teams. All right, this all sounds great in theory, but how do you actually do it? Let's get practical and get our hands dirty. We're going to walk through the exact blueprint for setting up your very first module. It really just starts with 3 basic steps. First, you've got to change how you think about folders. Instead of folders for controllers and models, you're going to have a modules folder, and inside that, folders for each business domain, like user or orders. Second, you just have to tell Composer where to find all these new classes. And third, each module gets its own service provider. This is so cool because it makes the module responsible for loading its own routes and its own migrations. It's totally self-contained. Now, inside each of those modules, this is the pattern, this is the golden rule you have to live by. A request hits a controller, right? The controller's only job is to validate stuff and then immediately pass it off to a service. The service class, that's where all the magic happens. All your business logic lives there. The model is just a detail about how you store the data. Nobody outside the module should ever touch it directly. Okay, so this next part. This is absolutely critical. This is where most people get it wrong. We've built these nice separate modules, but they can't live on their own islands forever. They need to talk to each other. So how do we do that without just creating the same tangled mess we started with? And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? If your orders module needs to know something about a user, what's the right way to do it? Because if you get this part wrong, this whole beautiful architecture kind of falls apart. So let's start with what not to do. This is the trap everyone falls into. You just feel like, oh, I'll just create a normal eloquent relationship. Order belongs to user. And it seems harmless, but what you've just done is create a hard dependency.
Now your order module is directly importing the user model, which is a private implementation detail. Boom. The boundary is broken. They're not independent anymore. So here's pattern number 1, the right way to do it. This is for when one module just needs some data from another. Instead of touching the user model, your order service simply asks for the user service in its constructor. See the difference? It's talking to a stable public API, the service, not a private internal model. And the best part? Laravel's service container just figures it all out and wires it up for you. It's beautiful. Okay, but what if you don't need data? You just need to react when something happens. Well, for that, Laravel's event system is absolutely perfect. So when an order gets created, the order service just fires an order-created event. It basically just shouts into the void, hey, an order was just created. It has no idea who's listening, and it doesn't care. Then, way over in the user module, a listener can catch that event and say, oh, an order was created? I should probably send a confirmation email. It's total decoupling. The order module knows absolutely nothing about the user module's existence. And here's a really cool little side effect that just shows how powerful this is. You can have a shared base request class that lives outside of any module. Then every form request in every single module extends that one base class. And what's the result? Every single API validation error from anywhere in your application will have the exact same consistent JSON format. And you get that for free. It's just clean. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground. So the big question remains, should you actually use this on your next project? Let's try to answer that and wrap up with a few final pro tips. First, some practical advice. If you do this from scratch, you're going to hit a few weird spots with artisan commands. Make migration is fine, you can just give it a -path flag. But for things like models and controllers, you'll probably just end up creating the files by hand. And please, this is a big one. Once you've made your user model inside your user module, delete the default one that Laravel gives you in app/models. If you don't, you are going to run into some very confusing authentication bugs. So here's the bottom line. You should use this when your app has obvious, clear domains. You know, users, orders, inventory, stuff like that. It's perfect for a growing product with a small to medium-sized team. But please do not use this for a simple blog or a basic CRUD app. Architecture is supposed to solve a problem. Don't add complexity just because it sounds cool. And that really just leaves us with one final thought. When you look at that next project on your horizon, does it have the potential to become that big ball of mud? If it does, maybe, just maybe, it's ready for this pragmatic and really powerful middle path. I hope this was helpful, and thanks for watching.